wake up, sunlight tapping on the door. Feels like I've been here all before. Radio humming, the world feels right. Every little thing's in tune tonight. Shadows fade, the truth comes through. Fresh start in the morning blue. Hey now, blue sky shining down. Lift your feet, don't touch the ground. Laugh it off, let the good times stay. Oh yeah, it's a blue sky day.
Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cats. I do appreciate you being here. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. That would help me out. Go ahead, smash that like button. Share this out with your friends. We are going to be chatting all things Don Lemon a little bit later. This was huge news. I mean, I was so happy when this came down. I was very critical of Pam Bondi because I definitely think there needs to be arrests made. There should be some sort of insurrection act invoked. President Donald Trump in regards to Minneapolis. They're pulling out of Minneapolis. I was expressing my frustration with the Trump administration on Friday. And, you know, we got off the show. I had a special guest on. If you guys missed it, it was archived on the YouTube's Ray Estrada. He joined me. We talked about foreign policy, Trump's foreign policy, how it's awesome. But domestically, seems like to be forgetting we're dealing with the enemy internally. And I think it's, you know, China and our foreign adversaries, foreign enemies, infiltrating the U.S. from within. Getting these bleeding heart liberals like Don Lemon to buy into, you know, this idea that these illegal immigrants are here and they just want free healthcare, and, you know, they're like them. Okay, that they're projecting their liberal ideology onto these immigration groups, these migrant groups, and that's just not accurate. These people don't like America, most of them, and that's why we're carrying out mass deportations, and we can't afford our culture to be eroded to a point of not being able to be recognized as America, where you can't recognize America anymore. So anyway, Don Lemon, he went into a church, invaded a church, the city's church in St. Paul, Minnesota. And we're going to be getting to him because he was taken into custody. What does that mean now? And today's show is going to break it down a little bit later. The disgraced ex-CNN host. Yes, he was fired, by the way. This is according to the New York Post. He was arrested in Los Angeles on Friday. Now, that was right after I got off my show. Like, I had been talking with our special guest, so I wasn't checking Twitter. And then all of a sudden, like 30 minutes into, you know, after 8 a.m., I'm like, oh, man, he's been arrested. And that was news I definitely needed. Don Lemon was arrested on Friday over this anti-ICE protest where they went into a Minneapolis church. He's on video being asked to leave, and people don't understand this. You as a journalist, the First Amendment, it doesn't, where your rights end is where somebody else's begins. If somebody on private property asks you to leave, you have to leave. This is private property rights. Okay, so you don't get to your First Amendment rights. Your freedom of press rights do not trump somebody's private property rights. Okay, so he stormed this church along with a nonprofit organization connected to BLM. And he was arrested on Friday. Don Lemon was taken into custody by federal agents in Los Angeles, where he was covering the Grammy Awards. So his attorney wrote a statement, shared it with multiple reporters. He was one of 4 people arrested by federal agents on Friday in connection to the city's church attack. So I don't know exactly what he's going to be charged with at this point. I hope that it is. I mean, obviously it's federal, so I'd imagine it's going to be the FACE Act, which doesn't just extend to abortion clinics or abortion clinic entrances. So the FACE Act, Abortion Clinic Entrances Act, or the KKK Act, which is very fascinating. So the KKK Act is, I think, even stronger. Maybe she charges him with both and gets that sentence to be a little bit longer. I don't know. It's going to be hard to make these charges stick because his defense is clearly the First Amendment, freedom of press, freedom of speech. But it does not apply here. Like I said, private property rights, your rights end where mine begin. I asked you to leave the property. There's video of him being asked to leave. He wouldn't leave. And it was coordinated, obviously. This was a coordinated attack. He wasn't just there covering the events. He was inciting, getting his online viewers to get to the church, the parking lot. He was thanked for attending the coordinated attack. His attorney has maintained that the frequently fired correspondent, he's been frequently fired. He was fired at CNN for the Nikki Haley thing where he made misogynistic comment about her age or something. So he was fired there. But he maintains that he was a journalist and he was doing constitutionally protected work there. Here's what his attorney said in the statement. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine a light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. Guess what? This attorney, by the way, I looked into it. Abe Lowell is the disgraced attorney, is the attorney of the former first son, Hunter Biden. Okay, so just to give you a heads up there, it's limited. Okay, your First Amendment rights are limited in some sort of capacity. Like if you, for example, they were saying that Alex Preddy was expressing his First Amendment rights, that Renee Good they were expressing their First Amendment rights. No. Okay. Those aren't First Amendment rights. Running somebody over with your car, potentially shooting someone, like that's not classified as a First Amendment right. Okay. What you were doing in this church was entering private property. You were asked to leave. Somebody actually broke their arm. Okay, according to the feds, they said that somebody broke their arm, and they were prohibiting people from getting their children. That's called kidnapping. There were crimes that were obviously committed. This is not protected speech. Okay, it's not even speech if you're breaking people's arms and hoarding people's children. Like they would go downstairs in the church and they would want to collect their children from the daycare, the Sunday school, and they couldn't get their kids. So the question here is, when is it when journalists stop acting like journalists and when they turn into activists, okay, and in some cases have engaged in crimes? If Don Lemon had any kind of coordination, funding, marketing this coordinated attack in any kind of way, he not only, trespassed on private property, but he facilitated the other crimes and was complicit in allowing those other crimes to take place. The kidnapping of the children and the breaking of people's arms and the harassment. Okay, so this is what the discussion is going to be. When are you a journalist? When are you an activist? Now, people have come after me and they've said, you're not a journalist. I don't claim to be, right? I'm just somebody with a journalism degree But I never go out and say like, oh yes, I'm a journalist, right? Back when I was doing some work in Bloomington, and I remember this clear as day, the Washington Post, they wrote a hit piece on me, and they said that I was QAnon, yada, 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 an extremist. And, she just followed me around my entire day. So I started my day at like 6 a.m. in the morning. This reporter from the WAPO, she followed me around my entire day. Okay. So I wasn't working on behalf of the Bailey campaign, but I was there. And I had campaign merch on, and I was filming. I was just a citizen filming and doing some independent media online, right? Some independent reporter, I suppose. And, I had campaign merch, not Darren Bailey campaign merch, but I had a different candidate on my shirt. And, I had gotten tickets from the Darren Bailey campaign to go to ISU Bone Student Center to watch the debate play out between J.B. Pritzker and Darren Bailey. The point is, as I'm bringing this up, I was covering what was going on in the park prior to the debate between Governor J.B. Pritzker and Darren Bailey. And she writes in her article that I was acting as a biased journalist or something like that. Tried to paint me as like some sort of biased journalist. Well, I never claimed to be a journalist, right? I wasn't going up to people and saying like, oh, I'm writing an article, I wasn't trying to present things through an unbiased lens. And that doesn't even necessarily mean you have to be or you have to be unbiased to be a journalist. You can be a right-leaning journalist. You can be a left-leaning journalist. What Don Lemon was doing here was not that. I wasn't promoting the Darren Bailey event. I wasn't promoting people buying tickets to go see Governor J.B. Pritzker. I wasn't, actively campaigning. I was just a citizen, a voter who happened to be there and was catching things on film, right? He was thanked by the organization. It was clear that he and the organization talked ahead of time. They met, and he was telling his online audience to go to the said event in the parking lot. He was asked to leave the private property, and he did not leave. That's where he really screwed himself, was in that video where he was asked to leave and he didn't. Okay. Delivering information. You can deliver information as a journalist, or as a right-wing reporter or as a left-wing reporter. But where you cross that line is when you start coordinating the events that are taking place and you're not delivering information that's happening, or you're facilitating the events in which they happened. That's where there's a clear distinction between activist and journalist. And I think that, this is really going to answer that question. When does a journalist turn into an activist? I would say somebody who is actively involved in the protest, somebody who is facilitating the happenings around them. Okay, rather than delivering the information about the happenings around them. Anyway, wanted to get to that maybe a little bit later. We'll talk more about what I think he's going to be charged with. I would imagine the FACE Act, it extends to churches. A lot of people think that it just extends to abortion clinics. That's not true. It extends to places of worship, which is really weird. It's a 1994 act. And they created it like, it's strange. It's almost like they wanted to, I hate the act. I wish we didn't have it, but it elevates abortion clinics to the status of places of worship. Not only that, abortion clinic entrances to a status of places of worship, which is just silly. Mark Huck, you guys can look him up. He was a pro-life activist. He was outside a good ways away from the abortion clinic praying. And then some abortionist from within inside the clinic comes out and starts harassing him and his son. He defends himself. and his son, and then Joe Biden, under the Biden administration, they kick in his door at 3 a.m. and arrest him under the FACE Act. But the FACE Act also extends to places of worship. I find it odd in 1994 that they passed this, like the entrances of abortion clinics are like places of worship. That's what they're saying in this law. And truly, when they tell you what they think, they're telling you out loud. Okay, so leftists truly believe that these places are places of worship, abortion clinics, and they are actively participating in a religious practice, which is the sacrifice of children. And yeah, people think I'm crazy, conspiratorial. No, the left sees this as a sacrament or some sort of religious tradition where they sacrifice children to whatever pagan deity that they're worshiping. Really, it's just the opposite of Christianity. You believe life, you knit me together in my mother's womb. Children are a heritage from the Lord. This is just the opposite of Christianity that they're doing. So shouldn't be religiously protected, because it's just the opposite of a religion. And yeah, I don't know, sacrificing children in an abortion clinic, not something I want elevated to a protected status or protected under the law by any means. Anyway, let's see. He'll probably get probation at most. Yeah. Nothing like the 11-year sentence the old ladies got for praying on the sidewalk outside of the abortion clinics. Yeah, exactly. I doubt he sees. I mean, I haven't even gotten and I've been looking for it. Maybe you guys have found it. But I haven't gotten the mugshot. You know, he should have been pictured, right? I don't know. Maybe that was like planned out ahead of time, like where his mugshot wasn't even allowed to be distributed. So I don't know. Doubt he sees the inside of cell. He should. Because hey, we've got to say it very loud, and we've got to make an example out of him. I hate to say that, but you know, in some cases you have to make examples out of people when it comes to breaking the law, because this is going to stir up people across the nation to invade churches and religious spaces, actual religious spaces, not abortion clinics. You're going to have people, if you don't come down and really crack down on this crime and fullest extent of the law, if you don't crack down on this, you're going to inspire more people to do this sort of thing as a form of protest or as a form of free speech. And we can't have that, because people will die. He's lucky that this wasn't a small town church in middle of nowhere America, because I promise you these people wouldn't have come out with their lives. There's churches that direct their congregants and certain congregants to take down active threats, take down, if you're charging the pastor, if you're screaming or harassing in people's faces, if you're harming congregants, for example, the person with the broken arm that happened, it was so much worse than what we thought it was. They were kidnapping children, holding them hostage, and not allowing the parents to go and collect their children from Sunday school. If that were to happen in small town America, you know, this is St. Paul, right outside. It's kind of like right outside of Minneapolis. It wouldn't have flown. You wouldn't have had the pastor politely asking you to leave. I'm just saying. So he's lucky to have come out with his life. He should be, you know, he says he's a Christian, praising Jesus for his life, because it could have turned very badly for Don Lemon and those other agitators, or really, I don't even know what you would call them. Agitators, terrorists, attackers. It could have turned out really poorly for them. They're lucky that they got arrested and that they still have their lives. Anyway, let's talk about this Democrat-appointed judge. Bill Clinton appointed judge. He freed this illegal alien. You guys remember the illegal alien who ditched his kid, abandoned his kid, and mainstream media tried to convince you that this kid was being arrested and those dirty, dirty ICE officers arresting children. So this judge is lecturing America about cruelty. And he freed this illegal alien and his kid from deportation. So we'll talk about that. I also want to talk about the Grammys last night or this weekend. I don't know. Do you guys watch the Grammys? I didn't watch it. I just catch these clips. And I'm going to share with you what Billie Eilish said. She swore and slammed ICE along with other singers, songwriters. Well, I don't know what they are. Celebrities, people who, really aren't real people. Okay. But Jelly Roll, he was there and he lifted up Jesus. And Jelly Roll, unlike, I would say, Billie Eilish, Katy Perry, if you look into some of these singers, they have experienced zero hardship in their life. Jelly Roll has actually experienced, I would say, hardships in his life and actually knows what it's like to be a person in the real world. I would say Billie Eilish, with her 14 million, I think it is, dollar mansion. Katy Perry, it's really fascinating. Katy Perry was actually, I believe, a Christian singer at some point, had very loving parents, was very supported in her childhood. Not to say those people don't experience hardship of any kind, but from all appearances, it looks as if she had a comfortable life. Okay. And then she turns around and, goes completely, abandons her faith, and does a complete 180. And it's really fascinating. A lot of these singers who swore, got up there and said, F this, F that, they have nothing, absolutely nothing to be pissed about. Like, your life is $14 million mansions and $500 bottles of wine. Okay. Jelly Roll, he talks about how all he had was little radio, little Bible, and a cell. And he's uplifting and just praising Jesus in his speech. And it's just so fascinating. Right before I got on, I was listening to a devotional. It talks about, those who are persecuted for my sake, or the righteous, the meek, these people, they will have tremendous reward in heaven. And I was reading that devotional, listening to it, and Jelly Roll, I think he's going to have tremendous reward in heaven for all that he's done to spread the gospel. And he looks great. He's lost so much weight. So I didn't know Jelly Roll I knew he was trying to lose weight, but I didn't know he lost that much. So we'll talk about Jelly Roll and the split here at the Grammy night. I also want to talk about the Epstein files. So the left, they have gone to Twitter and they're saying, Trump is mentioned in all of these Epstein files that were just released. It's total nonsense. And I've got proof for you. The mentioning of Trump the mentions are by, how do I put this delicately, nutcases, okay, who have made claims about Donald Trump and him participating in criminal activity on Epstein's island. But all of these people who make the claims either have quite literally been diagnosed with mental diseases and defects, and they're just nutcases. And there is no names of these people who are making these accusations against President Donald Trump. There are no victims. These are people just making claims. They're not actual victims. We do have an actual victim who absolved Trump of any wrongdoing. So we're going to get to that. Hit that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe. Let's talk about the judge. Judge Freddie Byrie. Fred Byrie. Okay, so he's a U.S. district judge, Bill Clinton appointee, and over the weekend he ordered that Liam, 5-year-old Liam Ramos, and his father is an illegal from Ecuador. Okay, he ordered them to be released from a detention center in Texas. That's where they're currently at after ICE had taken the two into custody in Minneapolis. Okay, so little Liam and his dad, Adrian Arias, his dad is Adrian. You've got 5-year-old Liam and Adrian. They've made headlines. I'm sure you guys know, the mainstream media outlets, they were reporting that the 5-year-old Liam was arrested by ICE and that he was standing in the cold with ICE being arrested, and the photo went viral of the little boy in the streets of Minneapolis. It was cold. They screamed from the rooftops, mainstream media, "This is cruelty. Blah! They're arresting babies." And the truth, of course, is not that. We know that Adrian had abandoned his son after agents approached his vehicle. Okay, and the two were in the vehicle, Liam and Adrian. Okay, the father took off on foot and left his kid in the vehicle. Okay, no regard for Liam, his safety, his well-being. He just got out of the car and started running. Okay, so ICE agents kept Liam. They kept him warm. They even took him to McDonald's and got him a meal, before trying to return him to family members in the area. Chatted with Liam, tried to figure out where his family was. Those family members, they knocked on the door of some family members in the area to try to give Liam to them. But the family members refused to open the door. In mainstream media, they tried to say, oh, this was ICE using Liam as a pawn, and they were trying to deport those family members inside the home. That is total BS. They were trying to give the child the next of kin because he's an abandoned child. Okay. Now they refuse to open the door. So what does ICE do with an abandoned child? Not leave him out on the street. Right? They take him into some sort of custody. They're not like cuffing him or chaining him. Okay. Or not clothing him or feeding him. Okay. The father and son were later reunited. They found the dad. Incredible work done by federal agents to find somebody who fled on foot. They reunited them together at a family center. Okay. So catch and release. This was very controversial. You remember AOC, Kids in Cages, and all of that, 2016, 2017. And it's kind of like repeating itself here in 2026, 2025. We're slowing down the deportations. Donald Trump is clearly slowing down the deportations, the mass deportations. Although in his first year, Barack Obama doubled the deportations we've seen under the Trump administration in his first year, but whatever. They're pulling out Kristi Noem, Greg Bovino. But the mainstream media did the same thing. In Trump 1.0, they said, kids in cages, kids in cages. Well, there was a policy, that they would catch people like Adrian, and they wound up having kids, and they couldn't obviously house the children with grown illegal immigrants, other grown illegal immigrants that they were catching and deporting. So they came up with this catch and release program, under Barack Obama, where they would release illegal immigrants who had children, and they would release them, and they would await some sort of court date to try to seek asylum here in the United States just because they had children. And that was a disaster because you have people not showing up for their court dates, a total disaster. So what Donald Trump did with catch and release, he changed it to where, children were going to be detained separately than that of the adults. Okay, because you can't have kids detained with adults, particularly adults who have committed crimes, federal crimes. You can't have them mixing for obvious reasons. So they came up with this policy and did away with the whole catch and release thing. And by the way, Barack Obama was the one who built the cages, right? Or built these detainment centers, deportation, when they await deportation. So Trump tried to control the narrative. Remember when Trump said, well, who built the cages, right? Barack Obama, the Obama administration, Biden, Clinton's, right? They're the ones who built them. And he tried to get a hold of the mainstream narrative back then. He's tried to do that again in 2025 and 6, where he says, well, Barack Obama did more deportations than I've done in a year. Tom Homan is the guy, they're doing it right now. Tom Homan is the guy that was hired under Barack Obama to carry out mass deportations, and he was awarded a medal under Barack Obama, an award for carrying out those mass deportations. I'm just doing what Barack did. Okay, so Trump is doing that again in 2026. You fast forward to Trump 2.0. But the unfortunate thing is, we're probably going to see something similar. 2017, the 2018 midterms, they're going to pull back on deportations. They're going to pull back on the mass deportations, like they pulled back on their policy of detaining illegals, deporting them, despite them having, children. But anyway, bring this up because now, under this new Trump era, Trump 2.0, you've got father and son, they're reunited and they go to a family center. So they've created these family centers and they try to push out the families faster under the Trump administration 2.0. So that way you don't have kids sitting in detainment for long periods of time. Okay. And they're deporting them together. That was very clear by Tom Homan prior to Trump being really sworn into office. It was made clear by the Trump campaign. Tom Homan, in the early days of Trump being sworn in the second time around, that they were going to deport children with the families. We aren't going to do what Barack Obama did, which is this catch and release thing. Just because you have a child doesn't absolve you of the crimes you've committed by entering the country illegally. Okay, so they were hanging out, father, son, Adrian and Liam, were hanging out at this family center, okay, awaiting deportation. This is where Judge Byrie comes in. He's the Bill Clinton judge, okay, and he issues a ruling. And he said in the case of Liam Ramos, he said that the case of Liam Ramos originated from the ill-conceived, and I'm quoting him here in his ruling, and incompetently implemented government pursuit of daily deportation quotas, apparently even if it requires traumatizing children. So he's blasting the deportations, and we should have deportation quotas. We had 20 million illegals pour in under the Biden administration. Trump has had to stop the bleeding and has had to try to deport 20 million illegals. We are not on pace to do that. And there are still people coming in over the border. They haven't even completely stopped. It's gotten so much better, but they haven't even completely stopped the influx coming in over the border. But anyway, deportation quotas, apparently, even if it requires traumatizing children, like shame on them for trying to meet these quotas. Here's more from Byrie in the scathing opinion, which at times just reads like a lesson, a lecture from a liberal professor, a civics professor or something. Like, it's just so libby. And here's what he says. He admonished the government's ignorance of an American historical document called the Declaration of Independence. And then he started quoting Thomas Jefferson's grievances against a would-be authoritarian king, saying people are hearing the echoes of that history today. So he's saying that Donald Trump is a king and an authoritarian and ignoring the Declaration of Independence. And we're seeing all of this play out again. Just so dumb. The ruling was, it just reads like a white Becky in college, like trying to impress her very liberal ponytail wearing professor. Fox News Bill Melugin, he posted on X. So this is hilarious. The ruling, not only does it read like 22-year-old Becky trying to impress her ponytail liberal professor, but the ruling, the date of the ruling, he got wrong. So the judge actually wrote on the ruling that, this was issued February 31st, which of course is not real. It's not a real date. So he messed up the date. I think it was supposed to be January 1st, but we'll give him a pass on that. He also seems to be supportive of protest against Trump's mass deportation policies. Here's what Bill Melugin wrote on X. He's with Fox News. He said, Texas federal judge Fred Byery, Clinton appointee, has ordered the release of 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his father from the ICE detention facility in Texas. In his decision, he includes a photo of the boy, and he got the date wrong. Like I said, February 1st, it doesn't exist, or 31st, it doesn't exist. And he said that ICE's administrative warrants do not pass probable cause muster. He said that's like a fox guarding the hen house, and the Constitution requires an independent judicial order. Well, that does not make sense. Okay. They're not like arrest warrants. Okay. ICE, say Maria overstays her work visa. Okay. Or is not in compliance with her work visa. Let's say Maria works at Rivian in Bloomington. Okay. In Normal, Illinois. And Maria, she no longer works there, has decided that she's done working and is out of compliance with her work visa. Okay. ICE investigates that. They figure that out. And there is an administrative warrant that says, hey, let's go pick up Maria and question her about this, her overstaying her work visa or not being in compliance with it. Okay. That is all that is needed to go pick up Maria and bring her in and house her at a detention facility. And then they await to go before a judge, and the judge issues, hey, yes, this is clear for a deportation order. That's how this kind of works. Okay. He is giving these people way too much due process. We don't even have Second Amendment rights for felons in this country. Okay. You don't get due process rights if you are here illegally. Okay. There's administrative warrants that ICE can issue to go and create to go pick up people and bring them in for questioning, come to the conclusion that, yes, we want to deport this person. Let's go before the judge. The judge then ultimately issues a deportation order. They execute ICE that deportation order. But to go before a judge twice, so like what he wants, and this is just way too many hoops, okay? He wants the enforcement body, ICE, to not go pick up Maria when they figure out that she's overstaying her visa. He wants ICE to go check with him before they go pick up Maria. Like, there's just way too many layers of due process there for somebody who's not a citizen of this country. Okay, way too many layers. I don't even think like that's not even like, yes, you obtain arrest warrants. These people aren't being arrested. They're being detained. They're being apprehended. And then they go before a judge and they try to argue. Maria would argue, actually, I am working at Rivian. Here's all my, punch-ins, from the last month. Okay, judge, so don't deport me. Grant me asylum, because of XYZ. That's up to her Maria to get the judge to not deport her. But yeah, this is just way too many hoops that this judge wants ICE to go through. They have to do their jobs. Okay, they're an enforcement body. So anyway, this judge goes on and he writes this. This is funny. It says, observing human behavior confirms that for some among us, the perfidious lust for unbridled power and imposition of cruelty in its quest to know no bounds and are absent of human decency. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah, so he's saying that, their deceitful lust for power, and they're just so cruel, and their quest for cruelty knows no bounds. And man, this just reads like a 23-year-old liberal trying to impress her professor. And they're absent. Their quest for power, or their quest for power is absent of human decency. So he's saying it's very cruel what they did to Liam. Yeah, okay. They took the 5-year-old and took him to McDonald's after his dad ran away from him. Okay. And the rule of law be damned. Ultimately, petitioners may, because of the arcane United States, so the mysterious and arcane is like ancient, mysterious United States immigration system. Petitioners may, because of the arcane United States immigration system, return to their home country involuntarily or by deportation. But that result should occur through a more orderly and humane policy than currently in place. Okay. So he says, self-deportation is okay. Even involuntary deportation is okay, but it has to be humane. Which I don't know what was inhumane about taking the kid to McDonald's, reuniting him with his dad who abandoned him, making efforts to house Liam with family members in the area. Like, I don't know how much nicer these ICE agents could have been. Okay. The judge on his LinkedIn page, by the way, which he should have really stepped down or not issued any kind of ruling, because clearly he has a bias, and this is proof. On his LinkedIn page, he liked a post about people protesting Donald Trump's mass deportation policies. A guy's bias. Okay. This judicial bias, just the way that his ruling reads, it's clearly bias. It doesn't even sound like a ruling. It sounds like a lecture that I'd get from a Libby professor with a ponytail and a joint hanging out of his mouth. Okay. Bill Melugin, he said, he once wrote in a prior immigration related case, in a different tweet, Bill Melugin brings this up. He says, quote, I understand why you want to be here. I was born a mile north of Rio Bravo, and won the lottery by being born on the other side of it. Okay, so this just goes to show you how he feels about immigration. He feels very passionately about it. He lives a mile north of the Rio Bravo, and he won the lottery by being born inside of it. Yes, being born here in this country is awesome. It's great. It's a blessing that I thank God for every day. However, this guy, he almost makes it like we have to be guilty because Americans are born inside the country, and born within inside its borders. And we are adopted into this this country as citizens. What really makes you a citizen is, not being, a complete jackwhack and being loyal to your country. This guy sounds almost guilty and ashamed that he is an American. So he has strong feelings about citizenship, clearly, because he wrote this. And he feels guilty about being an American. This is a personal bias that clearly has made an impact on his ruling. Okay, so the judge's order specifies that Liam and his dad should be released as soon as possible, or as soon as it is practical. So no later than Tuesday. So that's tomorrow. They are to be released. So, he has deep guilt over being an American, this judge, and that guilt should disqualify him from hearing deportation related cases or immigration related cases. Clearly, he's got a bias. He liked social media posts about the protests against Trump's deportation policies. He's not looking at the law here. Did the father violate the immigration law? And if he did, that warrants a deportation and a deportation order. So yeah, and he tried to claim that picking up the guy, law enforcement, right? They know what laws are broken. It's kind of like, okay, in the store, if you see somebody and you're an officer of the law, okay, a police officer, and you see somebody robbing the store, what this judge wants these police officers to do, or this enforcement body to do, is to go and ask a judge to collect that person they're seeing in real time break the law. And like, if we lived in a world like that, criminals would not be apprehended. They would not be cuffed and brought in, and our judicial system has to be trusted enough. Okay, our law enforcement has to be trusted enough for this thing to work. Okay, they actively saw this guy, probably ran his plate. He was in a vehicle with his kid, Liam, Adrian. He's illegal from Ecuador. They ran his plate, probably realized, oh, this guy is here illegally, pulled him over, said, you have to come with us. He proceeded to flee officers, flee the scene, and run from the officers. They chased him down on foot. They kept the kid, took him to McDonald's, tried to return him to next of kin family. They wouldn't open the door for ICE. So, yeah, that's where we're at. I just, U.S. citizens, if you were stealing a loaf of bread in the grocery store, you wouldn't be afforded that extra warrant that this judge wants you to obtain. Okay. Police officers see you breaking the law. Okay. And then they go to apprehend you. And then after you're apprehended, you can fight your case in court. Oh, I wasn't stealing it, judge. I was just looking at it, right? Or I was window shopping, whatever. You have your day in court. That's due process. What they want is to completely destroy the enforcement aspect of this three branches of government, judicial, executive, legislative. They want you to ignore that we have a law that says, hey, coming into the country illegally, staying here illegally is against the law. You have to be a U.S. citizen to reside here, or naturalized, or here at least on some sort of visa. And if you're not in compliance with that visa, or you're not a U.S. citizen, that subjects you to enforcement of that law, which would be apprehension. And then it goes before a judge and they issue a deportation order, and then the enforcement body takes it takes that deportation order and executes the deportation. So like, it's so messed up. It's so messed up. You can't have layers and layers and layers and layers of due process, because then the judicial branch is way too strong and there is no enforcement aspect to our branches of government and the way the country operates. It's just so sad. And this guy's an idiot. Let's talk about Jelly Roll. So you got to notice the difference here. So people got on stage, not Jelly Roll, but a lot of singers, including Billie Eilish, and I will get to her comments, but they got on stage and they started praising themselves and their virtue. Excuse me. They started signaling to the world how virtuous they are because of their opinion on ICE. Very annoying to watch. But there's an opposite here that I want you to look at. I'm going to compare the two clips, Billie Eilish, what she said, and Jelly Roll and what he said. Jelly Roll did the opposite. He humbled himself. He took the attention off of himself and he praised Jesus. And really, I got goosebumps this morning listening to Jelly Roll testify at the Grammys. Take a listen.
Kick me off here, so just let me try to get this out. First of all, Jesus, I hear you and I'm listening, Lord. I am listening, Lord. Second of all, I want to thank my beautiful wife. I would have never changed my life without you. I'd ended up dead or in jail. I'd have killed myself if it wasn't for you and Jesus. I thank you for that. I thank you for my label, Broken Bow, Country Radio, baby. What's up, dog? Oh, Republic, John Manili, we did it, baby. There was a time in my life, y'all, that I was broken. That's why I wrote this album. I didn't think I had a chance, y'all. There was days that I thought the darkest things. I was a horrible human. There was a moment in my life that all I had was a Bible this big and a radio the same size and a 6x8 foot cell. And I believed that those two things could change my life. I believed that music had the power to change my life and God had the power to change my life. And I want to tell y'all right now, Jesus is for everybody. Jesus is not owned by one political party. Jesus is not owned by no music label. Jesus is Jesus, and anybody can have a relationship with him. I love you, Lord.
Wow. Just incredible. It like almost brings tears to my eyes. This is a man who's humbled. He says, I was a horrible human being. And that's where a lot of these lips go wrong. They will never utter, I am a horrible human being. I'm a terrible human being. I have no idea why God loves me and has set me apart for his divine purposes. I don't know why he did that. I am a terrible human being. I talk about this all of the time. It's just a great example. So in my walk in faith, I realized how horrible of a human being I was and how disobedient I was after coming to faith in Jesus. So yes, of course, that moment when you profess Jesus as Christ and Lord, as Jelly Roll did, he was in a cell with a Bible and a radio, and he believed that his life could change. And he asked Jesus to come into his life. Like, yes, we're all horrible beings before Jesus. And then you accept Jesus, and then the Holy Spirit does this sanctification process. And the desire to sin and be a horrible person sort of goes out the window, but we still are inherently evil beings. Human beings are just inherently horrible. And they'll never get that. They'll never understand that, libs, those who don't have Jesus, that you were a horrible being. And then you go through this transformation process and you're like, wow, I could really be like Jesus, but you still fail. And this was a moment in my life after I professed Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior over my life, was living for God, doing all the righteous things. And then all of a sudden I come face to face. I think it was Isaiah. Hold on. Let me look this up. Isaiah 6:3, I think it was, on this gentleman's hat. Now I'm missing it. Hold on. 6:8. Sorry. Not 6:3, 6:8. Isaiah 6:3 or 6:8. So I'm sitting there at this table. I'm at this wedding expo in Bloomington at the Doubletree Hotel. Okay, I'm sitting next to my coworker. My coworker goes up and says that he's going to do some tarot cards at the wedding expo, which is weird. It was at being at a wedding expo, I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so annoying. You've got a bunch of brides running around drunk. I can smell the tequila. I was also like in my first trimester. And like the smell of alcohol was just like, ugh, I just couldn't stand it. And it was like right over next to me. And I was like holding back vomit. Because it was just so gross. But there's like women and it's all commercialized, right? And I just don't like commercialized weddings. I think that it is something to do before God, and the commercializing of weddings is just a little annoying to me. Not to say, it's not fun to have like a big party. It's just the over commercialization of it is annoying to me. But anyway, I'm sitting there and I've got my coworker here and he says that he's going to go do the tarot cards, right? Or something. I think it was tarot cards, some sort of palmary. I don't know. And he goes, I'm just looking for something. I'm just looking for something. And I feel like there's something missing in my life. Me being a new baby, or I would say like teenage Christian, right? Just professed like Jesus Christ in my life and as my savior. And I've been walking with Jesus at this point, probably for a few years. And so badly, I just wanted to grab his hands and pray over his life. But something stopped me. And God told me to do it, and I disobeyed. So this is really crazy. This guy comes up, the wedding expo. He's a groom, and his bride come up, and they come up to our booth. And he's got a hat on that says Isaiah 6:8 on it, right? And I ask the fella, I go, what does your hat, Isaiah 6:8, do you know the verse? He goes, actually, I don't. And he told me a story about the hat. And he goes, I don't. I actually don't. So I take out my phone. I Google Isaiah 6:8. And it says, here I am, send me. Right. And this is crazy. This verse, what it does is it says that you should be a proactive leader and you should answer the spiritual mission that God has for you, and to be a messenger for him, and to advance the purposes of his kingdom and tell people about him, right? Tell people about God, send me, do the missionary work in me. And I still ignored it. This sign came to me like God was talking to me through this hat, and I still disobeyed him, and I still didn't say anything to my coworker, who proceeded to go read the tarot cards, or and I just felt, I don't know, like embarrassed of God. And to this day, I am a horrible human being for that, and I still am repentant of that. But it just tells me that I am a flawed human being, a horrible human being, even after professing Christ as my Lord and Savior. And that just sits with me. I'm a horrible human being, but through faith in Jesus, I am loved, and I have the hope of heaven, and I have the blessed, abundant life that he promises me here on earth, despite me being such a terrible person. So libs will never admit that they're terrible people. They go up there, they virtue signal, and they talk about how great they are for their opinion, whether that opinion is about race relations, ICE, whatever, climate change, and they go virtue signal. Okay. So Ariana Grande, Billie Eilish, Olivia Rodrigo, Katy Perry, they were all bashing the Trump administration for being cruel and inhumane. See, I'm not a terrible person. Donald Trump is a terrible person, and I am a righteous person because I hold this opinion. Okay. It's funny because, they chose to bash the Trump administration for cruel and inhumane deportations. But they didn't talk about their friend Jay-Z or call him out because, he was exposed in the Epstein files. No. Suddenly their loud voices go very quiet when it comes to those things, right? Jay-Z being exposed in the Jeffrey Epstein files. But, they're silent there, but they're calling out the Trump administration for their mass deportation policies, which is really just federal law enforcement. We have a Congress who passed laws. This is the way the country works. The laws are enforced by an enforcement body. Then after enforcing the laws, it goes to the judicial branch. They issue a deportation order, and then those deportees are deported by that judicial order, right? That's how this thing goes. But anyway, these ladies totally silent on Jay-Z and the Epstein files. I'd be curious. I'm going to play Billie Eilish here. Take a listen.
Everyone is illegal on stolen land. And yeah, it's just really hard to know what to say and what to do right now. And I feel really hopeful in this room, and I feel like we just need to keep fighting and speaking up and protesting, and our voices really do matter, and the people matter. And I say sorry.
So it was bleeped out there. She said F ICE, right? And I promise I will get to your comments. Trump was the most mentioned in the Epstein files. Hilarious. Today is the show you want to stick around for, because in just about 15 minutes, I'm going to wrap this up. We're going to get to Trump being mentioned in the Epstein files that were released. Like millions of documents were released by the DOJ, which goes to show you that the DOJ, even if it's not completely favorable of Donald Trump, they're willing to release whatever they've got. But they're nutcases. Okay. So, nutcases that have no names, have history of mental illness. There is no evidence. There is no complaining victim. Trump can be named in the Epstein files by complainants who say like, oh, I saw Donald Trump, on Epstein's Island. But this person has a documented history of mental illnesses and defects, and there is no evidence. Okay, so he can be mentioned. Several people were mentioned. Unlike, there's videos, Bill Clinton, there's videos, photographs, Jeffrey Epstein. There's hardcore evidence of people associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And even then, just because they're pictured doesn't mean that they actually victimized girls. Now, in the pool, where Ghislaine Maxwell was in the pool with Bill Clinton, and there were redacted people, redactions typically mean victims of crime. That would be more closely associated with hardcore evidence. But Donald Trump, there is a victim. We have a victim, and she absolved him of any kind of wrongdoing. To Virginia Giuffre, she said Trump wasn't involved at all. Okay, so that's the only, and he kicked out Jeffrey Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago club. Donald Trump did. We'll get to that. Definitely a show for you, my friend. There's mentions, but there's no videos, pictures, evidence, hardcore evidence of Trump with victims. So yeah. Anyway, Billie Eilish, let's get back to her. She has a $14 million mansion in LA. I'd be very curious what her reaction would be if ICE showed up there with all of the illegals and trucks and just let them out of the trucks and let them go inside her mansion. I'd be curious what she would say then. Would she continue to say, America stole land? Okay. She says that America is stolen land. Okay. So her $14 million mansion in LA is actually built right where the Tongva tribes once lived. Okay. I wonder if she is making plans to return it to long distant ancestors of the Tongva tribes. Okay. Is she planning on returning that to these native peoples, the indigenous peoples, the 14 million? Is she going to open up the doors and the gates of her $14 million mansion for the illegal immigrants that are being deported by ICE? ICE could probably show up there with a truck, let them all out, and are you going to let them into your home? Okay. I doubt it. Okay, so just to compare, Billie Eilish, Jelly Roll. Jelly Roll just walked onto that Grammy stage and did what most celebrities are scared to do: humble themselves. He pulled out a Bible. He thanked God for pulling him out of a deep, dark place, called himself a horrible human being. Hollywood elites will never do that. They'll just constantly virtue signal. I am the best because I have this opinion. And you could tell that the crowd was getting a little uncomfortable with what Jelly Roll was saying. He said, Jesus is for everybody. That's what I love about it. It's not just for Republicans. It's really for, I would say, those who are liberal, those who, won't humble themselves before the Lord. That humbling really has to happen. And Jesus is more for those people, those who are dark places. It's not for the perfect, for the polish. Jesus is not just for the perfect, the polish, or for the acceptable. He is for the broken, the addicted, the anxious, the lonely, and for the guy who messed up. Okay, that is who Jesus is for. And he wants you to come home. Okay, humble yourself, realize you're addicted, anxious, lonely, and then come home. Okay, if you're in a dark season right now, God isn't done with you yet. Okay, so the same Jesus that lifted Jelly Roll, he can lift you. So keep going, keep praying, keep believing. But to get back to Billie Eilish saying that America has stolen land, I kind of want to talk about the history here, because she clearly doesn't know the history of the Tongva tribes, where her mansion sits, her $14 million mansion. She decides to lecture. Every so often we get celebrities out there revising history and lecturing us on the rest of America about it, and about our history and how we're evil Americans, and we just stole all of the land here. So that's not true. And let's talk about specifically the land that her mansion sits on, the history of that land. And she says America's stolen land, so therefore there should be no such thing as illegal immigration, because you can't be illegally here on stolen land. It sounds profound, and then you think about it for 5 seconds and you're like, okay, what? Even if we stole the land, that doesn't really invalidate sovereignty. Okay, I wouldn't say stole, but rather conquered the land is what happened. In this case, with her $14 million mansion, we weren't the first conquerors of that land. It was actually the Spanish. Well, actually, it wasn't even the Spanish. It was the Tongva people themselves. The indigenous people themselves conquered that land from neighboring tribes. And then the Spanish got it. Then the Mexicans got it. And then we got it. Okay. But if stolen land, really conquered land, invalidates sovereignty, then there would be no country that exists on earth right now today. Mexico, Canada, France, not China. Like, all of human history, it's all about conquered land. Okay, all land is conquered land. So every nation exists today and sits on territory taken by force, treaty, war, like that's just, it's not uniquely American. This is human civilization. Okay, and God is pro borders and sovereignty and nations. Okay, which is why he, knocked down the Tower of Babel. Okay, in the Bible. And here we go. Let me tell you a little bit about the Tower of Babel. God confused their speech, causing them to stop building and scatter. Babel meaning confused. So we're all meant to be scattered, living in our own countries with our own language. They had one language. This was what globalism did. They thought that they were more powerful than God, and they were quite literally trying to build a tower to reach heaven and make a name for themselves. Okay, so this can be read about in Genesis 11. But nations exist today because God intended nations to exist, really. But all nations that exist today have either been and sit on their territory, have either been taken by force, treaty, war, whatever. Okay, this is human civilization. Not exclusive, unique to America. Anyway, so the Tongava, her mansion sits on this land where the Tongava used to live. They lived there. This is where Los Angeles is today. Okay, but they weren't the first people there. Okay, they were not, a unified nation state with border citizenship or centralized government. The Tongava tribe, they actually displaced other groups before them. They fought neighboring tribes with crazy military tactics. One thing that's really cool about the indigenous people that they dismiss all the time is their war tactics. Like, would not want to get in a fight with these people. Unfortunately, they were screwing each other and not very hygienic, and they died, not even really in war, because they were animals in the battlefield. They were like savages in the battlefield. And they would hang themselves by their feet from the neck of their horse, use their horse's head as a shield, and shoot bow and arrows upside down. These people were insane on the battlefield. Okay, they weren't dying defending themselves on the bed. Really, what they were dying of was bestiality, cannibalism, their lack of how do I put this gently, decency. It was they were just nasty. That's really what killed them. It wasn't the fact that they weren't able to defend themselves militarily in a lot of cases. But anyway, the Tongava, they claimed this land through warring with neighboring tribes and other native tribes. Okay, history is not a children's book. They were upside down, shooting bow and arrows on their horses' heads, wrapping their legs around their necks, using their horses' heads as shields. It was not peaceful. Okay, and I'm sick of pretending otherwise. And really, what it is, it's feminization. Women don't like to talk or think about how the native people were were into cannibalism, bestiality. They don't like to think about how they would, hang from their horses' heads, shoot arrows. That's not really something women like to think about because they're grossed out by it. I think it's cool. But, they're just pretending. And that's not, it's just dishonest. Stop pretending. History was not a children's book. These people were ripping the hearts out of people and sacrificing to the sun gods. Okay, they were screwing animals. Okay, they were killing each other for power and for survival. Okay, and they were claiming land. So the Tongava did that first. Okay, they killed the neighboring tribes the other tribes that were there, and they conquered that land. Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. The Tongava people were not taken over by Americans or European settlers at first. They were taken over sort of by the Spanish and colonized in the late 1700s by the Spanish, Spanish explorers. they were deeply affected by that. So the Spanish came in, and they're Catholics. Okay. So the Spanish mission was to come over and really bring Catholicism and religious conversion over. And their missions, they had their own diseases or things that came over, from Spain. And they took over this land, and it wasn't pretty. But they believed that they had, and like the Tongava, really it was a thing of like tribal survival and like power, and they believed that they were entitled to the land rather than the other tribes that were there. So the Tongava took it over. The Spanish believed that their mission was just, okay, that they were going to bring their religion, and they were going to convert some of these people, and they did. So they didn't come in and kill everyone. Okay, the Tongava people. That's not how this worked. I mean, they did bring over things that killed them, like diseases. Some of them were forced into labor. It's not pretty, but this is history. It wasn't pretty when the Tongava took it over from the other tribes. It's not pretty when the Spanish take it over, okay? But this was the Spanish, okay? The United States took control. Americans, Protestant Christians, took it over really in 1848. So that was the 1700s with the Spanish. And the Tongava population, these indigenous people that Billie Eilish and others like to project their liberal ideology on, the brown people, right? They were already pretty much gone, and they were devastated by the Spanish rule. I mean, there were some left, and they had converted, and a lot of people don't talk about this, but Tongava, some of these tribes, when these settlers would come over, a lot of them really liked that way of life, and they converted out of their own, free will, because the sacrificing of their friends for the sun gods was not really appealing to them. The cannibalism, the bestiality, they didn't like it. Okay, so a lot of them did convert to Catholicism under Spanish rule. Okay, so, but for the most part, by the time the United States came in, the Americans, it was all like there were no, like, it wasn't a huge population of Tongava people left over. Okay, so fast forward 1848, there's actually a treaty drawn up, okay? Under international law of the time, this treaty ended a war, so between the Spanish and the United States. The treaty ended the war, transferred California in the Southwest to the United States. This treaty, that's what this treaty did. Paid Mexico. So the Mexicans, sorry. So in between Spanish and the United States taking it over, there was another period of people ruling. That's Mexico. Sorry, I skipped that part. We paid Mexico $15 million, okay, through this treaty as well. So they transferred California and in the Southwest to the United States in this treaty. This is called the Guadalupe Treaty of Guadalupe. This was in 1848. I'll get to what happened. So the Spanish took it up. Okay, so Tongava took it over from various other tribes that were there through force, warring tactics, bow and arrows. Yeah, they took it over. Then the Spanish took it over. And then the Mexicans took it over. And then the United States took it over. Okay. This wasn't a rogue land grab because we paid Mexico for the land, actually. And we guaranteed property and civil rights to existing residents there on this land, Los Angeles. Okay. Where Billie Eilish's $14 million mansion sits. Okay. So this wasn't a rogue land grab. Really, this is state to state to state to state conquest. And eventually the United States came in and they did a legal transfer. Like, there was war, but borders were formed and there was money paid. And this was decent. Okay. It wasn't like the way the Tongva took it. Okay. I can tell you that much. There was an actual treaty. And here's where the myth really falls apart. In 1848, California was very sparsely populated. And this is when Mexico took it over from the Spanish. It was sparsely populated, poorly governed, economically stagnant, and politically unstable under Mexico. Okay, this was a mess of a territory. I wouldn't even say it was like a country or a true territory. Like under the Spanish, it was a little better, and then Mexico took it over. But Mexico itself had controlled California for 27 years since 1821. Before that, it was the Spanish. Okay, so in the 1700s, the Spanish came in, took it from the Tongvas. And then you had Mexico come in and controlled California for 27 years from 1821 to 1848. But prior to that, the 1700s to the 1821, that was the Spanish. So the idea that California was ancient and settled, sovereign Mexican homeland is historically false. It was barely managed by Mexico City. Okay. Now, the Spanish in the 1700s, they tried to convert these Tongva people to their religion. A lot of them really liked their religion more so because it didn't involve them like dying and killing their friends. And then they introduced, language and trade and agriculture. And yeah, it was harsh at times, true. But, a lot of the Tongvas, they were like, hey, this is better than worshiping sun gods and bestiality. Okay. And constantly warring with neighboring tribes. Some of them really preferred the Spanish settlement. And then Mexico took over. And here's what Mexico did. They secularized Los Angeles. Okay. So Spanish came in. They kind of made life better. Okay. And under the Spanish, it looked more like a country or more like a true like governed like society. Now Mexico came in and they secularized everything. There was no religion, there was no trade, governance, and what little of the indigenous people were left there, they were actually displaced and impoverished because of Mexico's mishandling of governance. Okay, they didn't have a plan. Spanish, they had a plan, they had a mission, they wanted to go in there and change things for the better. Mexico didn't. So the US took over and they brought something radically awesome. Okay. And it was different than the Spanish, different than the Mexicans. They brought in rule of law, courts, property deeds, civil rights, predictable governance. And the early American influencers, what they were influenced by, rather than the Spanish, which didn't work because it was Catholicism, arguably, and Mexico came in and secularized everything. They didn't have a plan. The early American settlers, they were heavily influenced by Protestant Christianity. Okay, natural law, this belief that your rights come from God, not the state. And the problem with Catholicism was that the church was the one who kind of dictated your belief in God and what you worship. Like the Pilgrims, they were Protestant type Christians who broke away from the Church of England. And this idea that, your belief in God is not a personal relationship, but rather you have to go through the church or some sort of priesthood in order to tap into this relationship with God. Protestant Christianity, the belief is that your rights come from God, not the state, not the church. And it's a totally different worldview that focuses on individual responsibility, work, family structure, and community order. Okay, so this is what really started to work. So once the Protestant Christians came in, everything started to get better. The gold rush happened in 1848, a year later after the treaty, coming to that treaty with Mexico. The gold rush happened and it exploded under Mexican rule. That gold would have never gone, it would have gone undeveloped. It would have been controlled by the elites. It would have fueled corruption. Under American governance, our rights come from God. We have a personal relationship with God. Towns began to spring up, infrastructure. It was booming. California became a state by 1850. And that speed alone tells you everything great about American systems, how transformative they were. Okay. So people were prospering. Much better off than they were under the Tongavas, much better off than they were under the Spanish or the Mexicans. Okay, California didn't fall because America was evil. Okay, it changed hands several times. Okay, before America ever got their hands on it. And Mexico, they sucked. They were losers, and they couldn't develop it and actually develop the land to where it was prosperous for everybody. Because they lacked this ideology, lacked Protestant Christianity. So empires and nations that failed to secure borders, populate the territory, defend the land, govern it effectively, they lose the territory. That is not cruelty. That's reality. Okay. You have to be a good steward of this land. And, America didn't steal it. It was won in war, signed treaty. We built a civilization, preserved that civilization, and that's why we've got it today. Okay. So, I wanted to bring up that history because I doubt Billie Eilish knows any of that. And, it's like it's stolen land. Well, it's conquered land, and it's been conquered by indigenous people. They took it from indigenous people, other native tribes, and then they took the Spanish, and then the Mexicans, and then we did. And now we've been able to keep it since then. Why? Because it's governed by Protestant Christianity, really Protestant Christianity ideas, and it works. Okay, that's why America is the greatest place on earth, because of Protestant Christianity. Okay, so Trump, let's get to him. I don't know if our friend is still listening, but he definitely needs to tune in for this because he's constantly in the comments section. You guys can always comment, but this guy's constantly in the comment section. There's videos and pictures of Trump too. Yeah. Is he with like redacted young girls? No. Bill Clinton was in the pool with, that's most recent dump of Epstein files. People are on the left are saying that Trump is implicated, that he's involved in Jeffrey Epstein trafficking humans to people. And I've told you multiple times, we are never going to get the Epstein client list. I don't care about any of this stuff. Okay. They released millions of pages. The DOJ, and this is because of that new law that Congress passed pretty much unanimously. I think Clay Higgins was the only one who voted against it in the House. It was a BS law, stupid, because I don't really care about any of this. Like in all investigations, you're going to have like wacky weirdos. You're going to have like things that don't make it into the full investigation. You're going to have like weird witnesses, weird complainants. This is all the garbage that, we can sift through, and maybe some of it's interesting, but most of it's just going to be garbage. That's really what the DOJ was directed to release, was just more garbage, things that we already know, things that, isn't going to help us find out what people want to know about Jeffrey Epstein is who he trafficked humans to. We're not going to get that because that's sealed by the courts at the direction of our intelligence agencies. And I don't think that there's a way to unseal it. Perhaps Tulsi Gabbard would be the one to unseal it. But even then, is it a matter of national security? What do we know about those court documents? And would those court documents upon their release cause global economic collapse? If I was Trump, I would direct Tulsi Gabbard to go unseal those court documents, and I would deal with whatever happens, whether that's total global economic collapse, war, because I think that it goes so deep where there's prime ministers involved, there's banking CEOs involved, but I don't think we're ever going to get those names because, quite frankly, it would probably throw us into a global war or global economic collapse, where people don't trust the banking system anymore. They don't trust their politicians anymore. There's uprisings everywhere. It would be probably apocalyptic. And I don't think that we're going to get that. And I think that Trump knows that it would be apocalyptic. And not to say that I would be all right with it. Honestly, if the truth is out there and it winds up being apocalyptic, then so be it. At least the truth is out there. That's my take on the whole thing. But it's probably good that I'm not president, okay, of the free world. But anyway, let's talk about this most recent dump, which is really just garbage. Because what really needs to happen is the unsealing of court documents. And I don't even know if it's possible because it was done under a national intelligence agency that isn't the current administration. And I don't even think that there's a possibility of unsealing that. If he really wanted to, maybe Tulsi Gabbard and his intelligence communities under the Trump administration could unseal it if they really tried or tried to stretch the law a little bit. But I don't know. So let's address this recent release. Okay. What was released? I want to talk about one specific part that has been released, and it's the tips to the FBI. And this is what the left is like grabbing onto like a bone. They're like, yeah, the FBI National Threat Operations Center and the tips that have been sent to this office. Okay. That one, the center, and then they also released tips to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. For the Southern District of New York. So there's tips. So people calling in, phone lines, emailing tips to FBI's National Threat Operations Center and to the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Okay. Now, the left is grabbing onto these tips. Okay. And they are spreading them all over X. And they are claiming that these tips are evidence because some of these tips mention President Donald Trump by name. And these tips mention Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. And the left is saying, oh, well, this is evidence. Whoa. Back up here. Okay. Because of course the left is spreading this about Donald Trump, that this is evidence that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were in on the human trafficking together. And that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked humans to Donald Trump because he's mentioned in these tips. Okay. But there's a catch, a big catch that the left is leaving out. Some of these tips do mention President Donald Trump. And I'm going to put this kindly. These are random, nutty tips. Okay. Millions of pages were released. In all investigations, you have tip after tip after tip after tip. Okay. And you have random nutter people who are submitting those tips in some cases. And there's no evidence to support some of these claims that are submitted in the tips. Okay. So hold on. Just a quick sip of water. So the New York Times not a conservative bastion, okay, of journalism. It is a left-leaning outlet. They're not even posting some of these tips that were made, and they're showing some sense here, because why go there? A lot of these tips were made by people who didn't even have names, okay, attached to the tips, okay? So, for example, one claim, okay, involves President Donald Trump's, and the left has brought this up, National Golf Club in Rancho Palos Verdes in 1995 to 1996, okay? So, one claim says, like, there is where victims were victimized, at this golf club in this time frame between 1995 to 1996. But the golf course didn't exist there. Okay, it didn't even exist then. So that kind of puts a crimp in the claim. Okay, oh, there's victims there at that golf club from this time period, but the golf club didn't exist at that time period there. So the claim can't be true, or the tip can't be true, because there was no golf club there in 1995. So things like that. But the left, they don't stop spreading this nonsense that Donald Trump, he's mentioned in these tips. Well, yeah, but is the tip like real? And like, is the claim like factual? Is there some sort of evidence behind it? No. But that doesn't stop them from spreading it. The left is also leaving out. There was a specific summary that was released with the millions of pages the DOJ had released at the same time. Okay, as the pages. The DOJ released a summary that includes things like the reporting person had psychiatric issues, okay? Or they didn't bother to leave contact information or their names when leaving the tips at the center or with the attorney, the U.S. District Attorney at Southern District of New York, okay? Or they didn't respond when we contacted them back. There are a lot of nuts on the internet, okay, when it comes to this Jeffrey Epstein thing. And there have been for quite some time. And people are calling in tips, okay, and not leaving their contact information, or the reporting person of this tip has documented psychiatric issues. So there's a summary that goes with these tips, okay, of who made the tip, why, did they leave contact information, were they contacted after making the tip, and, it's all of these tips. There's no case, okay, there's no case there. There's no evidence that these tips checked out that mention President Donald Trump. Okay. There's even multiple members of Congress, Democrat congressmen, who are spreading these tips around, claiming that this is like evidence against President Donald Trump and that he's implicated in this Jeffrey Epstein scandal. No. Okay. You didn't do any research, 5 minutes worth of research, read the summary. Okay, that the DOJ released simultaneously with the tips. And that's kind of concerning. I mean, the fact that we have Democratic members of Congress who are not taking this seriously, and they have no ability to discern these tips, and if there's evidence associated with them, that's concerning, because these people represent you. But again, I'll say, don't vote for Democrats. This is an indication of that. They're spreading this around, saying that Donald Trump is implicated here in these tips. The Justice Department made it clear that Friday's documents include falsely submitted images, documents, videos, and they are fake or false. That release, because they wanted everything, right? Congress demanded everything about Jeffrey Epstein. They want everything about it. But yet They don't know that the one thing that we do want is sealed by the courts, and Congress can't get it. The DOJ can't get it. The FBI can't get it. Even Donald Trump can't get it unless he directs the national intelligence agencies to force the court to unseal them, which I don't think is even possible at this point. Okay, but they wanted everything. This is a gay law that they passed Congress unanimously. It was so stupid. And it should have been like light bulbs going off for you when they passed it unanimously. Like, come on. They knew, like, members of Congress, I'd imagine, were at Jeffrey Epstein's island. They're not going to pass anything that's going to implicate them or make them look bad. They know what the DOJ has. They know what's sealed up in those court documents. They're not going to vote, to release documents that could be damaging to them, members of Congress, or damaging to the people who fund them. Okay. So that's your red flag right there, that people voted for this thing. Like, everybody voted for it. There's got to be one member of Congress who really doesn't want, certain documents getting out there surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein case. But they know that, like, there's garbage out there, and this will keep the riffraff quiet or chill. Like, if we pass this, it'll calm down the riffraff from both the right and the left. You and I, and those on the left who want to see justice and want to know who the humans were trafficked to. We're never going to get it, folks. That's just the way it is. Okay, so stop demanding for pointless garbage. Like, this is like false submitted images, documents, tips made by people who are mentally ill. And there's a lot of things that go on in a years-long investigation. I mean, they take tips from people that are crazies. Okay. A lot of the documents contain false claims that President Donald Trump was involved. Okay. And I just proved that one of these tips said that Donald Trump victimized somebody at the golf course. And that's a tip that came in, but the golf course didn't even exist at that time. In which the tip said, like, hey, it was in 1995. It didn't even exist. So kind of a crimp in the claim there. And a lot of the claims made against President Donald Trump were not when the height of Jeffrey Epstein. No, this was made right before the 2020 election. Okay, the tips that were being made to the center and to the Southern District of New York attorney right before the 2020 election. Of course they were. Okay. People were trying to attack President Donald Trump at that point. And, the left is ignoring this statement from the DOJ that says a lot of this stuff is fake. A lot of this stuff was submitted right before the 2020 election, not at the height of Jeffrey Epstein. When was he arrested? Hang on, I'm looking for when he was arrested federally. Okay, so he died in 2019. When was he arrested? I'm looking for the year. I don't know. This has been going on for so long. 2007 possibly is when he started to get investigated. I don't know. It's been years. And 2020, I mean, this was a year after Jeffrey Epstein had died by suicide. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. So this was a year after Jeffrey Epstein had died when all these tips suddenly started coming in 2020. Yeah. Okay. And the fact that the DOJ did release this information, it was all garbage information. But the fact that they did release it and these documents aren't exactly favorable, it kind of puts Trump in a negative light. He has to do some PR here. Okay, which is easy because a lot of these tips, like the one I just told you about the golf course not existing, you can kind of shut these down really quickly. Some of these things. But the fact that they put him out there anyway kind of shows me that, hey, the DOJ is willing to release anything that they've got, even if it puts Trump in a negative light. So I know that people were concerned about that. The DOJ is releasing everything they've got. Okay, at this point, we're like scraping the bottom of the barrel. But people don't get that the documents we want are sealed by the court and can't be unsealed, likely. So the left, they just want to smear Donald Trump. Okay, they don't want to look at the statement that, hey, this is like false documents. These are like false claims. These are, tips. This is a summary of who made those tips. They're nutters. They made claims without any evidence. They wouldn't even give us their names in most of the cases. We couldn't contact them to follow up on the tip. Okay. And think about it. Joe Biden and his team, they had all of this stuff. Okay. They never released it under his administration, but out of the utmost transparency through the Trump administration, they're releasing it. They're giving it to you, even though there's some, not so positive light things in there about Donald Trump. They're releasing it anyway. Biden would have used it, okay, if any of this information was valid. The tips, if it was evidentiary at all, they would have used it, but they didn't because they couldn't, because they were just nutter claims about President Donald Trump. That's all they've got. Okay. And it's not normal at all. I want to emphasize this, to release files like this in criminal matters. Okay. The only reason why they're doing this is because Congress passed that stupid law that was unanimous, besides Clay Higgins. Okay. The only reason why they're doing this is because of the law. People would never see things like this in a criminal investigation because a lot of the time that stuff is ruled out and people aren't interested in it. They don't include every single tip, when releasing things about criminal matters. But there was a law that forced the DOJ to release everything. Everything except the documents that are sealed. So it's because of the law this stuff was dumped out there. Whether it's true or not, whether it was criminal or not, it doesn't matter. It was the law forced them to dump it out there. So bottom line, unless you have actual allegations from a victim, okay, that's one thing that's absent here. You have to have actual allegations from a victim, evidence, supported by the tip. Say there was a tip, and there was evidence with that tip. The tipster gave you his name. There's, photos, videos that aren't fake, okay, that were submitted with the tip. There's nothing like that. There's no victim. There's no complainant saying that Donald Trump victimized me in some sort of way. Everything you see out there thrown out by the left, apply the 48-hour rule, check your facts, okay? Check that summary that the DOJ released as well about the tipsters, who they are, when they submitted the tip. I mean, if there was a tip submitted in 2020, it's pretty clear that they were just trying to attack President Donald Trump at that point, because at that point, Jeffrey Epstein was dead, okay? The left wants to ignore what we do know. Trump, there's no victim out there alleging actual allegations of a victim saying that Donald Trump victimized me in some way. Donald Trump raped me. Donald Trump forced me. There's nothing like that out there. But what we do have is Virginia Giuffre, who cleared President Donald Trump. She said he never did anything. And then we are ignoring that Donald Trump actually booted Jeffrey Epstein from his club years ago and helped the attorney of the victims. Okay, Donald Trump did all of this, and we're ignoring all of that. And look, I've been looking at this case for a couple years now, 5 years. And the left ignores that, all of that, and they grab onto like a bone these silly little things. And that tells me that nothing has really changed from these basic facts. There is no complaining victim when it comes to President Donald Trump. There is one victim who died. Let's see, Virginia. She just died recently. April 2025. And it was a weird death, folks. It was really weird. She was the survivor of Jeffrey Epstein abuse, and she died by suicide. And it was very strange. But she was the one saying that, hey, Donald Trump didn't do anything. And she died by suicide. Okay. So everybody keeps ignoring the basic facts here. With 3 million pages released, and still Donald Trump is still president. He's still not arrested. There's still no victim complainant or victim alleging that he did things to her. That tells you that Democrats don't have anything. There's 3 million pages that the DOJ released. Okay. The Democrats have got nothing, and they are desperately spinning these tips that came in to try to advance this agenda of theirs to say that Trump is a pedophile. Okay. And they've got nothing. They've got nothing. All right. Hit that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. I think I've got one more. I don't know. I think that's it. Yep. That is it for the day. Tomorrow we'll be back at it, and I'll have some good stuff for you. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this out with your friends, and I will be back tomorrow morning bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Let's see. I wanted to make sure. God Rules, His Amazing Grace. Yeah, I'm just taking comments. All right. I think that's good. All right. Smash that like button. Visit PatriotPumpEnergy.com today. Get your bottle of Patriot Pump. It's a pre-workout. Promo code ConservativeCat at checkout. I'll see you tomorrow.